picture staring at a jigsaw puzzle that is, entirely blue sky, or maybe wrestling with a spreadsheet that has crashed for the 5th time today.
Oh, yeah, the absolute worst.
Right, and you just drop your hands, push away from the desk, and declare, well, that's it, I'm throwing in the towel.
You just give up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We toss this phrase around constantly for, minor inconveniences. We use it to signal a peaceful, if somewhat frustrated, surrender to a tough project or just a really bad day.
Yeah, it's super common.
It is. But today, we are pulling from a fascinating stack of historical sports articles, some medical breakdowns of combat trauma, and even 19th century slang dictionaries to trace this ubiquitous idiom back to its literal bloody roots in the boxing ring.
Which is quite a journey, honest.
It really is.
Yeah.
We're going to explore how an act that we usually associate with simply quitting is, in reality, a profound mechanism of salvation. Okay, let's unpack this because we use this phrase so casually, completely detached from its incredibly intense origin.
The detachment is, well, it's profound. When you use that phrase at the office, there is obviously no physical danger involved.
Oh, right, unless it's a really bad paper cut.
Exactly. But in the environment where this phrase was born, the boxing ring, or the squared circle as it's traditionally known, the stakes are literal survival.
Wow.
Yeah. To really understand the immense weight of throwing in the towel, we have to look closely at the ecosystem of a professional boxing match, specifically the people standing just outside the ropes.
It's almost like a high-stakes NASCAR pit crew.
That is a great comparison, yeah.
Because when a fighter steps into that ring, they're the one throwing the punches, but they are absolutely not alone. They have this backup team, they're cornermen, and the mechanics of what happens in that corner are just incredibly strategic.
The corner functions as a highly specialized medical and tactical unit. Between rounds, they have a brutally short window of time, usually just 60 seconds.
Wait, only 60 seconds?
Yes.
60 seconds, yeah. To completely reset a human being who's undergoing extreme physical trauma. They have to, assess damage, staunch bleeding, and recalibrate their entire strategy before the bell rings again.
Our sources actually break down these specific roles, and the sheer mechanics of it are fascinating to me. First, you have the cut man.
Right, the damage control.
Yeah, this is the person whose sole job is triage. If the fighter comes back to the stool with, an open wound, a busted nose, or blood pouring into their eyes, the cut man goes straight to work. They are frantically applying coagulants to staunch the blood flow. They slather Vaseline on the high points of the face, right? So the opponent's leather gloves slide off upon impact instead of gripping and tearing the flesh further.
Yeah, and they also rely on very specific, almost medieval-looking tools.
Oh, medieval.
Well, the most famous is the enswell, which is essentially just a chunk of cold iron.
Wait, cold iron just pressed on a face. Exactly. The cut man presses this freezing metal directly onto the fighter's bruised face, applying heavy pressure to manually constrict the blood vessels. This forcefully reduces the swelling, because if a fighter's eye swells shut, they lose their peripheral vision.
Ah, right. They can't see the punches coming.
Exactly. And if they can't see the punches, the fight is effectively over.
Yeah.
So the cut man's job is purely physical maintenance under just extreme duress.
Dealing with human biology, cold irons, and real-time survival in 60 seconds is, well, it's intense. But the cut man is just one side of the coin here. The other major figure in the corner, and I think the one most crucial to our deep dive today, is the trainer.
Yeah, the trainer is vital. While the cut man handles the flesh and blood, the trainer manages the mind and the strategy. They're the overarching architect of the fight.
Right.
They are out there instructing, motivating, and constantly analyzing the opponent's shifting tactics, then feeding that tactical data directly to their fighter.
But the trainer has one other function, and it's a big one.
Yes, they do.
If the trainer believes their fighter is taking too much punishment, it is their responsibility to step in, signal the referee, and end the combat. They do this by physically throwing a towel into the ring. But I have to push back on this logic for a second, though.
Okay, go ahead.
Why is it the trainer's responsibility to make that ultimate call? If I am the fighter, I'm the one taking the punches, I'm the one whose career is on the line, shouldn't I be the one who gets to decide when I've had enough? Why hand that massive veto power to someone standing safely outside the ropes?
What's fascinating here is the psychology of a professional fighter, which fundamentally alters how they perceive danger.
Okay, how so?
Well, you have to consider the mindset required to even step into a boxing ring in the first place. These athletes spend years conditioning their brains to ignore their body's natural fight-or-flight response.
Right, they have to run toward the danger.
Exactly. They are trained to push through agonizing pain and to never ever show weakness. By the time they are in a professional bout, their adrenaline is completely spiking, and their pride acts as this blinding force.
So their biological warning systems are basically overridden by their training.
Precisely. In the heat of the fight, especially if they're concussed, exhausted, or operating on pure instinct, a fighter completely loses their objectivity. They simply cannot evaluate their own neurological or physical state.
Wow.
They will just keep swinging until their body completely shuts down. And that is how catastrophic, life-altering injuries occur. The trainer, standing safely outside the ropes, isn't clouded by adrenaline or head trauma.
They can actually see what's happening.
Exactly. They possess the clear, objective vantage point to see when a fighter is no longer intelligently defending themselves. When the dynamic is shifted from a competitive sport to, well, a highly dangerous beating, the trainer acts as the ultimate voice of reason, precisely when the fighter's pride takes over.
So you aren't just managing their health, you are actively overriding their willpower.
Exactly right.
And that tension leads us to a perfect real-world example from the source material, because when a trainer actually makes this call, it is rarely a quiet, peaceful surrender. It can be incredibly volatile.
Oh, it sparks intense emotion. The sources point to a very prominent modern example, the February 2020 World Title Heavyweight Contest between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder.
Right, I remember that one.
Yeah, it was a highly anticipated massive event with global viewership.
And midway through the 7th round, things are going very badly for Deontay Wilder. He is completely disoriented, his equilibrium is compromised, and he is just absorbing heavy sequential strikes from Tyson Fury.
Yes, and in that crucial window, Wilder's trainer, a man named Mark Breland, makes the agonizing decision. Observing that his fighter is taking continuous damage without effectively fighting back, Breland physically throws the towel into the ring.
He just tosses it in.
He does. He signals the referee to stop the bout, conceding the world heavyweight title on behalf of his fighter.
The fallout from that single motion was immediate and, honestly, polarizing. It sparked a massive debate across the entire sports world.
It really did divide people.
Yeah. In one camp, you had medical professionals and seasoned boxing analysts stating that Breland absolutely made the correct ethical call. They argued he saved Wilder from absorbing unnecessary punishment that could have led to permanent, irreversible brain damage. He protected his fighter's long-term health.
But in the opposing camp, you had critics arguing the fight was stopped prematurely. And the loudest voice in that opposition was Deontay Wilder himself.
He was not happy.
He was absolutely furious with his corner. He fundamentally disagreed with the stoppage, arguing that his agency as a champion was stripped from him. He believed that as long as he was standing, he had a puncher's chance to turn the fight around. He felt his own team betrayed his warrior ethos.
That's rough.
It is. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see the ultimate tension between a fighter's pure will to continue and a trainer's fundamental duty of care. The trainer has to value the human being over the athlete. They have to respect the fighter enough to save them, even knowing that the act of saving them might completely destroy their professional relationship.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this dynamic isn't isolated to combat sports at all. Think about this in terms of your own career or personal life.
Oh, that's a good point.
Imagine you are deeply invested in a grueling, massive project at work. You are pouring your heart, your weekends, and your sanity into it. You are completely exhausted. Maybe your health is even failing, but your pride won't let you quit. You are determined to see it through.
We've all been there.
Right. And then a trusted mentor or a good boss steps in and pulls the plug. They cancel the project and tell you to go home. In that moment, you are going to feel exactly like Deontay Wilder. You'll feel betrayed, like your agency was stolen. But is that an act of betrayal, or is it the ultimate act of loyalty?
It is the ultimate act of loyalty.
Yeah.
They are preserving your energy and your well-being for the next challenge. They are saving your career, or maybe your mental health, at the temporary expense of your immediate pride. It is a profound intervention.
It really is.
But it's vital to note that this concept of an external party possessing the authority to step in and save a fighter, well, it is actually a relatively recent invention in the grand scheme of human history.
Right, which makes me wonder, if human beings are biologically wired to have this blind pride that requires an external savior, how did we possibly survive the thousands of years of combat sports before trainers were allowed to intervene?
That's the dark side of this history.
The sources take us on a massive rewind to answer that, looking at what the sport looked like before anyone cared about safety interventions.
The timeline of boxing is vast and, honestly, brutal. The earliest known artistic depictions of the sport trace back to Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt, roughly 3000 BCE.
Wow, 3000 BCE.
Humans have been organizing combat into a spectator sport for over 5 millennia.
5,000 years of fighting, and it wasn't exactly a gentle evolution. The sources detail the Roman era where fighters wrapped their hands in leather straps. And these weren't designed to, support the wrist or protect the knuckles like modern wraps do.
No, not at all.
They were designed to harden the fist and inflict maximum lacerations and blunt force trauma on their opponents.
Yeah, the Roman engagements were notorious for their violence, but the sport was truly formalized and elevated to cultural prominence by the ancient Greeks.
Right.
They held boxing in the highest possible regard, weaving it into their ideals of strength and endurance, officially incorporating it into the Olympic Games as far back as 688 BCE.
The conditions of the ancient Greek games are just hard to wrap my head around. First off, the sources point out there were no weight classes whatsoever.
None, which completely alters the mechanics of a fight. A competitor who weighed, say, 140 pounds could easily be drawn to fight an opponent who weighed 250 pounds.
How does a smaller fighter even survive that, let alone strategize a win?
Well, they had to rely entirely on speed, evasion, and extreme cardiovascular conditioning. A smaller fighter's only hope was to continuously dodge the larger opponent.
Just run away, basically.
Yeah, forcing the heavier man to exhaust himself swinging at the air under the hot Mediterranean sun until he simply collapsed from heat exhaustion or pure fatigue.
Which brings us to the next terrifying rule, or I guess lack thereof. There were no time limits, no rounds, you just fought continuously.
The absence of time limits fundamentally changes the objective. It wasn't just about landing clean punches. It was an absolute test of human endurance.
Right.
Greek boxing had deep religious undertones. It was viewed as a tribute to the gods. Therefore, enduring unimaginable physical hardship without yielding was a demonstration of divine fortitude. You fought until submission, unconsciousness, or worse.
Add to that the fact that there were no padded gloves, just bare knuckles or light leather wrappings. Synthesizing all of this, from the Mesopotamians to the Romans to the Greeks, paints a really grim picture.
It does.
It was an environment that demanded absolute victory or complete devastating defeat. The modern concept of giving up via a trainer simply didn't exist because there was no cultural framework for a cornerman to concede a match.
Exactly. The culture of antiquity did not view self-preservation in the arena as a virtue. It took a massive societal evolution to change that mindset.
It really did.
We have to fast forward all the way from ancient Greece in 688 BCE, through the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, all the way to the late 19th century to see a shift. This is the pivotal moment when society finally decided to tame the chaos, and the literal act of throwing an object to quit was formally introduced.
Enter the Marquis of Queensberry Rules in the late 19th century.
Yes, the Marquis of Queensberry Rules represent the foundation of modern boxing. During the Victorian era, there was a cultural shift towards modernizing and regulating sports. The bloody, unregulated, bare-knuckle brawls of the past were falling out of favor. They were viewed by the public as barbaric.
Too messy for the Victorians.
Exactly. For boxing to survive as a legitimate legal sport rather than an underground blood sport, it had to adopt standardized rules of fair play.
These rules introduced the norms we recognize today. They established rounds, which broke the endless combat up into manageable segments, allowing fighters to pace themselves and actually rest.
Huge change.
They introduced the 10 count, giving a knockdown fighter a designated window to recover rather than being hit while on the ground. And crucially, for our deep dive, they formally birthed the concept of a trainer conceding a match on behalf of their fighter. But the source material reveals a massive linguistic twist here. Initially, the object being thrown wasn't a towel.
No, it wasn't. According to a phrase book published in 1860 called the Slang Dictionary, this new, regulated practice of conceding a match was originally signified by throwing in a sponge.
A sponge. Imagine the sheer gladiatorial drama of a high-stakes championship fight. The crowd is roaring, there's blood, sweat, and absolute tension. The trainer makes the agonizing, strategic decision to end it. They wind up and they toss a damp, squishy sponge into the center of the ring.
It's quite the image.
It just doesn't carry the same dramatic gravitas, right?
It really doesn't. And this raises an important question about how our language and our idioms evolve in tandem with the practical, physical shifts within human culture.
Oh, true.
A sponge was a highly practical, essential tool in a 19th century boxing corner. It held water for the fighter to drink, it wiped away heavy blood, and it was used to cool the fighter's neck and chest between rounds.
Okay, so they always had it on hand.
Exactly. It was constantly in the trainer's hand. So practically speaking, when a trainer needed to swiftly signal the referee to stop the fight, throwing the object already in their grasp made perfect sense.
Practical, sure. But language requires a certain aesthetic flair to really stick in the public consciousness. Throwing in the towel simply sounds better.
It really does.
It provides a distinct visual spectacle. A towel sails through the air, a towel billows out, a towel visually covers the fighter, symbolically shielding them from further harm. As the physical tools in the boxing corner modernized and shifted, our language shifted right alongside it.
And we can even pinpoint roughly when that linguistic shift solidified. One of the earliest discovered printed uses of the phrase in its modern recognizable form, throwing in the towel, appeared in a 1913 edition of the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette.
Oh, 1913.
Yeah, so by the early 20th century, the towel had firmly usurped the sponge, both as the preferred tool in the ring and as the standard idiom in our everyday lexicon.
So what does this all mean? We started by talking about you, the listener, throwing in the towel on a bad day, maybe a crashing spreadsheet or a frustrating project. We use it to mean I quit.
Right.
But taking this deep dive into the history, from the brutal, endless endurance tests of ancient Greece to the Victorian societal shift that brought us the Queensberry Rules, all the way to the incredibly heavy emotional burden carried by modern trainers like Mark Breland, it fundamentally changes the perspective of the phrase.
It reframes the action entirely. It shifts the meaning away from an admission of personal failure and transforms it into a mechanism of institutional safety. Throwing in the towel is not, historically speaking, a symbol of personal weakness or a lack of willpower. It is an act of ultimate protection. It's performed by an objective, trusted advisor whose sole purpose is to ensure a fighter's long-term survival when the fighter is physically or psychologically incapable of looking out for themselves.
It's entirely about surviving to fight another day, rather than allowing yourself to be destroyed by your own pride today.
That's exactly it.
And that leaves us with a really powerful final thought to mull over. We so often view the act of giving up as this lonely, solitary choice, a quiet, isolated moment of defeat. But if you are in the middle of your own relentless fight right now, maybe it's a deeply draining career path, a failing creative endeavor, or just a toxic situation you've been stubbornly enduring, who is the cornerman in your life? Who is that trusted person standing just outside the ropes of your life, equipped with the objectivity, the genuine care, and the explicit permission to throw in the towel for you when your pride simply won't let you quit?